Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents A Very Beechwood Christmas, 4 Festive Magic Mini-Mysteries from Beechwood Harbor, by Danielle Garrett, narrated by Amanda Ronconi. A Very Beechwood Christmas. A Noel Nightmare. Holly. My favorite day of the year had finally arrived. I was decked out in waterproof boots, thick gloves, and my warmest winter coat for the outing. A fuzzy pink knit hat struggled to contain my auburn waves as they whipped through the wind. Snow covered the forest floor, as though we'd stepped through the wardrobe and landed in Narnia. "How much farther to this magical tree of yours?" Evangeline asked, her question accompanied by a little frustrated huff as she slipped in a deep pocket of snow. Harmony abandoned the sled she was pulling and swooped in, just in time to grab Evangeline by the arm. When she was sure Evangeline had her legs back under her, she pushed her pink and blue streaked bangs out of her face. She'd recently cut her normally shoulder-length hair even shorter, a decision she was likely regretting as her tresses could no longer be tamed into a ponytail. "Adam, we've been walking forever." Up the trail, my boyfriend turned, flashing his signature dimpled smile. "You two need a Snickers or something?" I stifled a laugh with my thick winter gloves as my roommates fumed. Adam chuckled, unruffled by their complaints. "A few more yards, and trust me, it'll be worth it." Harmony and Evangeline looked at me, as if I could do something about it. I shrugged and kept walking. It was my third Christmas living in the quaint town on Washington State's rustic coastline, and the annual Christmas tree hunt through the woods behind our home was a tradition I looked forward to all year, even if it meant having cranky roomies. They'd be fine as soon as we got back to the manor and made a pot of hot chocolate. I'd found that peppermint-flavored marshmallows went a long way toward soothing problems this time of year. "It wouldn't be so miserable if it weren't 10 degrees out here," Harmony exclaimed. "Someone needs to hunt down this Jack Frost guy and tell him to knock it off," Evangeline agreed. "I don't know," I said, joining Adam at the head of the line. Looping my arm through his, I smiled up at him. "I think it's kind of magical." "Magical my frozen toes," Evangeline grumbled. "Cheer up, Evie," Adam said over his shoulder. "It's probably only going to last a few more days. As soon as the big guy goes back to the North Pole, Jack will be busy elsewhere." "I still can't believe the real Santa is here in Beechwood," I said, smiling to myself. "It is pretty nuts," Harmony agreed. "He's got to be the real deal, though. No Rent-A-Santa would be that happy after spending 12 hours with a bunch of sugar-high kids and crying babies." I snorted. "I'm just saying," she continued. "I worked a shift at the Christmas tree stand yesterday and watched him all day. It's like he never gets tired or cranky. He's just, well, jolly." By some unknown process, the sleepy little town, Beechwood Harbor, was chosen by Santa Claus himself as a stop on his pre-Christmas world tour. According to the Supernatural Protection Agency, this was an annual tradition for the man in red. He chose a handful of cities and towns around the world to visit ahead of Christmas, as a way of gathering the magic of the spirit of Christmas. That magic would accompany him back to the North Pole and power the sleigh and elves and reindeer, everything Christmas, to get through the coming year. He'd arrived in Beechwood Harbor about a week ago and spent all of his time stationed at the gazebo in the center of town, adjacent to the outdoor ice rink and annual outdoor Christmas market. To the human residents of the town, he was just another mall Santa, some guy who fit the velour suit and looked semi-decent in a big white beard. But the supernatural residents, like myself and everyone at the Beechwood Manor, knew the truth. The SPA sent a letter ahead of time, alerting us to Santa's visit. Harmony, Evangeline, Adam, and myself had gotten a little more involved than we'd planned when the night before, a pack of drugged Christmas gnomes wreaked havoc on the town's decorations. We'd sorted it out in time for Santa's arrival and learned that gnomes were highly reactive to walnuts, and things had been calm since then. Santa would be in town for one more weekend before heading to his final stop on the tour. Then, the week before Christmas, He'd returned to the North Pole to finish preparations for his Christmas Eve ride. We walked a little farther and then came to a small clearing in the thick woods. Towering evergreens stood sentinel, as though guarding a perfectly shaped Christmas tree, its dark green needles dusted with snow. A ray of sunlight shone on it, making the whole thing feel like a scene from a Hallmark movie. "Oh, Adam! It's beautiful," I gasped. "How long have you been working on this one?" He smiled and slipped an arm around my waist, tucking me into his side. "Since your first Christmas here at the manor. You mentioned that it was your favorite part of the holiday, something you used to do with your parents. And I wanted to make sure that one day you'd have a perfect tree, not the Charlie Brown ones we usually find out here. This year it finally got tall enough, just about 10 feet. My nose burned, and it had nothing to do with the nip in the air. I wrapped my arms around him and squeezed gently. "It's perfect. Thank you." He leaned over and briefly kissed me before taking a step away and lifting up the handsaw he'd brought along for the hunt. "Harmony? Evie? What do you say?" "Well, after a story like that, how could we say no?" Evangeline teased, giving me a watery smile. "Looks good to me," Harmony agreed. "Now let's get home so the real fun starts." A thrill of excitement rushed through me, and I got into position to hold the tree up as Adam dropped to the ground. "You mean the cookie eating?" Adam teased, before he army crawled under the tree, his torso swallowed up by the thick gathering of branches. "Cookies and cocoa and Christmas music." Harmony sighed happily, moving into position beside me. "The 3 C's of the holidays." Evangeline spotted us as Harmony and I pulled the tree away from Adam as he sawed through the trunk. "Timber!" he shouted. The tree gave way completely, and we caught it. Adam, a dog shifter, easily moved the tree into position and tied it down onto the metal sled we'd brought along with us. He was strong enough that he could have carried it all the way back to the manor, but Adam liked to work smarter, not harder, especially when it would mean getting back to the cookies faster. Harmony took the lead, and Evangeline and I fell into step behind her, while Adam brought up the rear, pulling the sled. "So, speaking of cookies," he began. Evangeline swallowed. "Well, about that." "Evie," Adam groaned, "don't tell me you forgot." Evangeline cracked a smile and shoved his arm. "I'm just messing with you. Of course I didn't forget. I got all your favorites. Double chocolate, those frosted sugar cookies, snickerdoodles, chocolate-dipped Oreos, and those butter ones that come in a tin." My blood sugar spiked just thinking about it. "I got popcorn, cocoa, and those Christmas crackers," Harmony added proudly. "What kind of crackers?" Adam asked. "Not the kind you eat," Harmony replied with a laugh. "The present kind." "Oh." Adam sounded disappointed. "Have you guys already done your shopping?" I asked. "I'm almost done with mine, but stuck on what to get a few people." "Who are you stuck on?" Adam asked. I grinned at him. "I already got your gift. And no, I'm not giving you any hints this year. I learned my lesson last year." "I've done most of mine," Evangeline said. "I'm telling you, that whole Cyber Monday thing is really handy. Adam, when you finally manage to drag the Havens into the 21st century, promise me you'll make them do Cyber Monday too." "Ooh, good idea," I added. "I'd love to stock up on potion supplies." Adam chuckled. "I'll see what I can do. For now, the Wi-Fi still isn't playing nice with the concealment charms. The coverage is as spotty as ever, and I'm running into a lot of dead ends. And dead zones," he grumbled. Adam was a tech whiz and had recently accepted a job working for the SBA to see if he could get the worlds of technology and magic to work together in the secret communities scattered across the globe. Havens were tucked inside major cities, hidden from the human world by a series of complicated spells, wards, and charms. It worked to protect supernatural beings from the prying eyes of humans, but the Havens were practically old world in their reliance on paper records and low-tech solutions to modern problems. Sure, they had electricity and phone lines, but that was about it. Anything technologically advanced, like most new appliances, vehicles, and medical equipment, were rendered useless once behind the veil of spells. Magic made up some of the difference, But the Haven residents lived in close proximity to the human world, some even commuting from the Haven into the adjoining human city for work, and the demand for internet access, smartphones, and other gadgets was exploding. Adam was currently working in the Seattle Haven, but his work there would eventually be the pattern for all of the other havens to follow. At least, that was assuming he could get it to work. He'd been pretty frustrated, almost resigned, the last few months. He had a couple of weeks off for the holidays, and I knew he needed it. I did too, if I was being honest. I'd opened my own potions business over the summer, and had been burning the sage stick at both ends for months on end. The Haven didn't have Black Friday or Cyber Monday, but my shop had been bustling steadily as people prepared for the winter solstice and Yule. I had another full week of work, and then I would shutter the shop for 10 days to give myself and Harmony, who worked as my apprentice, a nice vacation. I was dreaming of long days spent before the fire, reading a good book and sipping on hot tea with my trusty familiar Boots, when I heard a branch snap somewhere to my right. "What was that?" I asked, coming to a sudden stop. "Did you guys hear that?" Adam perked, his shifter hearing even sharper than my own. "I see deer out here all the time." Apprehension ran up my spine, and I stepped off the roughly trod trail and peered deeper into the woods. "Boots? Is that you?" The orange tabby had been lounging in a sunspot on the back porch when we'd set off on our tree-finding mission. I'd invited him to tag along, but he wasn't a fan of the snow and wasn't about to leave his sunbeam for anything less than a bowl of cat food. But maybe he changed his mind? Evangeline came up beside me. "Holly, it was probably just a deer, like Adam said. Let's keep going. It's freezing out here." Curiosity tugged at me, but I turned away. "You can't blame me for being paranoid," I said. "The last time we were out here, we were attacked by a rabid gnome hopped up on walnut fudge." Harmony burst out laughing. "What?" I asked, giving her a puzzled look. "It really happened." I know, she said, still fighting her giggles. It sounds so ridiculous." "Well, it was very not ridiculous at the time," Evangeline interjected, an annoyed look on her face. "He was small, but his hexes really stung. I still have a little welt from the worst one." She rubbed her arm and glanced over her shoulder. "Do you think there's really something out there?" "Tell you what," Adam said. "We'll get this tree home and I'll come out and do a quick look around." It went unsaid that he meant he'd come back on 4 legs. In his beast form, he would be faster, and his already sharp senses would be even stronger. If there was something amiss in the woods, he'd sniff it out in no time. It would be a lot more effective than 4 of us stumbling around in the snow, especially without beaten-down trails to follow. "Okay, thanks." I nodded, and we continued back the way we'd come, for another mile or so, until the backside of the Beechwood Manor came into view through the tree line. Boots lumbered down the stairs on the back porch and came to greet us, answering my question as to whether or not he'd been the one out in the woods. He took a few tentative steps in the snow, lifting and shaking his large paws each time, before he gave up and returned to the safety of the porch. He flicked his tail impatiently, as if the blanket of snow was a personal insult. "Bootsy, it's just a little snow," I told him, suppressing a smile. "It's not going to hurt you." He answered with an indignant meow and slipped through the small cat flap on the back door. Without even looking, I knew he'd be planted in front of the cupboard that held his canned cat food. It was nowhere near his dinner time, but there was no reasoning with him when he was hangry. Adam cut through the twine he'd used to tie the tree to the sled and then glanced up. "You guys want to get the stand ready while I trim some of these low branches? I'll bring it inside in a few." "Works for me," Harmony said. "I'm ready to trade these boots for my slippers." "Me too," Evangeline agreed. I followed them inside, and within a few minutes the 3 of us reconvened in the living room, decked out in fuzzy jammies and warm slippers. Harmony turned on some Christmas music, and Evangeline went to the kitchen to start working on the cocoa, leaving me to wrestle the tree stand and box of decorations from the cramped closet under the staircase. The Beechwood Manor had an attic, but it was considered off-limits, as our ghost landlady, Posy, preferred to keep it for her own use. Adam brought the tree in through the front door, and we worked together to get it into the metal stand, while Evangeline and Harmony directed us from the couch, making sure we got it straight. No, too far, a little back this way, Harmony said. I tugged the tree toward my chest. There? Now it's a little too far the other way, Evangeline replied. Rolling my eyes, I moved the tree back and tried to arch back to see for myself. It looks good to me. You're too close to it, Harmony argued. From here, it looks crooked. Adam growled something under his breath. Gorgeous. Hold on, I said, moving the tree back toward me a tiny bit. There, Evangeline exclaimed. I glanced over at the couch, and Harmony made an okay with her fingers. Got it. Finally, Adam muttered, tightening the screws to cinch the trunk into place. It was the biggest tree we'd had so far, and I hoped the tree stand would be able to keep it in place. When it was secured, I took a step back and brushed my hands off, realizing I had pitch spots on my fingers. Boots sauntered into the room and eyed the tree. Scat Cat, this is not for you, I warned, picking at the sticky spots on my hands. If you want to climb a tree, there are about 1,000 of them just outside. Evangeline laughed, and Boots shot her a look. Sorry, buddy, she said, stifling her smile. 20-pound cats and Christmas trees don't mix, I added. That's a recipe for a broken window, and we all know how that would end. Adam wriggled out from under the tree and pushed up from the floor. Posey would make sure we all got coal in our stockings, that's for sure. He removed his gloves and hat. Now, where are the cookies? Once the tree and mantle were decorated, and an obscene amount of cookies consumed, Adam and I bundled up to take a walk around town. Twilight had fallen while we'd been busy inside, and the temperature had dropped another handful of degrees from that afternoon. The streets were mostly clear of snow, and the sidewalks had been salted, making it safe to walk around. As we wandered down the hill into the main part of town, the twinkling lights of the Christmas market beckoned us closer. Neighborhood kids had started a hockey game at the temporary ice rink, and a crowd of adults circled the edges, clinging to cups of hot beverages with the Siren Song logo on the side. The coffee house was also full to capacity, and it looked like they were hosting some kind of live music event inside the cozy space. Across the way, Santa's workshop was also humming with activity. Santa himself sat in his throne, a small blonde girl balanced on one knee. Stars, does he ever sleep? I wondered. Adam chuckled. Maybe he doesn't need sleep. He is magic, after all. I snorted. Yeah, well, so am I, and I think we both know how jolly I am when I get anything less than 7 hours. Adam laughed louder and grabbed my hand. Nah, you're always a delight. Liar, I shot back with a giggle. Looks like the reindeer came to join the fun, he said, gesturing at a small fenced-in area beside the gazebo. Sure enough, a few reindeer stood on the other side, poking their noses out as a family of 4 passed by. A tall man in an elf costume came down the steps from the gazebo and said something to the family. Smiles and words were exchanged, and the elf produced a bundle of carrots, seemingly from nowhere, and the 2 children laughed with delight as they raced over to feed the reindeer. We jogged across the street to join in the fun. This one is Dancer, the elf was saying to the family, pointing out different reindeer. That's Dasher. The lighter one over in the corner, that's Vixen. Wow! The little girl cooed. The parents exchanged a knowing smile, and I nudged Adam. Little do they know, I whispered. He smiled. No doubt the parents thought this whole thing was an elaborate setup, with reindeer borrowed from some petting zoo, and the Santa another volunteer in a rental suit. They had no idea that it was all real, and that they were currently wrapped in magic. What about Mrs. Claus? The little boy asked, his eyes filled with wonder as he peered up at the elf. Where is she? The elf squatted down beside the boy, bringing their faces level. Mrs. Claus is at the North Pole. Why? The boy pressed. Well, sometimes she gets shy around people. Does that ever happen to you? The boy looked up at his mother and then nodded slowly. The elf gave a knowing smile and then pulled something from his pocket. He opened his palm to reveal 2 gold badges, offering one to each of the children. "Thanks for helping me feed the reindeer. I expect Santa has you both on his nice list this year." The kids clutched the reindeer-shaped badges and had their parents pin them to their jackets. The elf pushed back up to standing and bid the family goodbye. "Thank you," the mother told him. "They'll remember this day for a long time to come, I'm sure." "You're very welcome. Have a Merry Christmas," the elf said. "Merry Christmas!" the kids sang together before racing off down the sidewalk, giggling and talking in excited tones. One of the reindeer poked its head through the fencing, watching the kids. I placed a hand on its head and stroked the surprisingly soft fur between its ears. "Looks like this one wasn't ready to say goodbye," I said. The elf stooped over and picked up one of the carrots that had fallen to the cold sidewalk. He offered it to the reindeer, and the creature nibbled the treat. "Dasher likes kids, naturally. But really, he's just in this gig for the snacks," the elf teased, his eyes glittering. There was something otherworldly about them, a mix between blue and violet. He looked like a normal man, a little under 6 feet, with a lean frame and a clean-shaved face. But his eyes told me that the elf attire wasn't just a costume. It shouldn't have surprised me, after all. If Santa was real, then so were his elves. I just hadn't expected them to look quite so big, especially after we'd encountered one of Santa's gnomes a week ago. It was hard to imagine the gnomes working side by side with elves if they were this tall. How did the gnomes keep from getting squished? I was about to ask when the elf spoke first. "You're Holly Bolt. How did you know that?" He smiled. "I'm Santa's head elf. It's my job to know." A dozen new questions sprang to my mind, but I couldn't decide which to ask first. "Where are you headed next?" Adam asked the elf. "We have a quick stop in Vermont, and then we'll go back to the North Pole," he answered. "This was our main stop this year, and Santa is impressed with the amount of Christmas magic he's gathered. We won't need to collect much more this year." Adam furrowed his dark brows. "So, wait, it's like a physical source?" The elf beckoned us to follow him, and we rounded the gazebo, walking past the reindeer pen to a cherry-red sleigh. "This is our travel sleigh," he explained, running a hand over the glossy wood. "Not the one we use for the big day. But if you look closely, you can see the magic we've stored up for next year." I leaned in, straining my eyes, but didn't see anything. With a chuckle, the elf jiggled a strand of bells, and the sleigh lit up with gold runes. They covered nearly every surface of the sleigh, and as we watched, another one began to etch into the painted wood. I couldn't read any of the symbols. I imagined they were unlike anything I'd find in a book about runes. Did Santa have his own secret language? "When we go back to the workshop, the magic transfers from the sleigh to the elves, and that goes into the gifts they make, and the gifts go into Santa's real sleigh, which travels to the reindeer. It's all a cycle." My mouth hung open as the runes faded from sight. "That's incredible." "I'll say," Adam agreed. "You know, before we got the letter in the mail, none of us realized any of this even happened. I mean, we knew Santa was real and all that, but seeing it up close like this, well, it's something special." The elf bowed his head. "It's an honor. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to get Santa to wrap things up for the evening. If left to his own devices, he'd be out here until midnight." We laughed and said goodbye. The elf went back to the gazebo, and we lingered, staring at the sleigh. "Kind of makes me wish I was a kid again," I said, with a contented sigh. Adam chuckled and looped an arm around my waist. "I know what you mean. I was just thinking about all the nights I used to try and stay awake, waiting to catch a glimpse of him. It never worked, of course, but I really wished I'd been able to see all of this when I was young. It's even better than I imagined it would be." I nodded in agreement, and we walked back to the sidewalk, saying goodbye to the reindeer as we went. They were happily noshing on a fresh pile of hay, and Adam grinned at me. "Speaking of dinner..." I rolled my eyes and laughed. "How could you possibly have room? You inhaled at least a dozen cookies all by yourself." He flashed a half-cocked grin. "Oh, gorgeous. We both know that was barely an appetizer." Adam talked me into a quick bite at McNally's. It was technically a pub, but they served a full dinner menu and functioned more as a traditional restaurant. By the time we left, the Christmas market was dark, the vendors having all gone home for the night. The lights around the skating rink were off too. Santa's workshop was still alight, but there was no sign of Santa. Apparently, the head elf had been successful in his attempt to get Santa to take the rest of the night off. We crossed the street, ready to head back home before it got any colder, when one of the reindeer let out a loud grunting sound that intensified as we stopped to look. "Maybe he wants more snacks?" I said, looking up at Adam. "Maybe," he replied with a chuckle. He held up his small takeout box. "Should we see if he likes cold onion rings?" "Adam, you're the only one in the history of ever that likes leftover onion rings." He snorted a laugh, but didn't argue. The reindeer grunting became louder, and the animal began to race from one end of the pen to the other, frantic and wild, as if looking to escape. A quiver of panic coursed through me. Something was wrong, and I doubted it had anything to do with carrot withdrawals. We waited for a car to pass and then hurried across the street. I held out a hand to the panicked animal and made a clucking sound with my tongue. Adam went around the gazebo. "Holly!" I ran my hand down the reindeer's face and shushed him before running after Adam. I hurried past the reindeer's temporary stable and found Adam kneeling on the ground beside the elf, splayed unconscious on the cold ground. Adam's fingers searched the elf's neck. Gasping, I slapped a hand across my mouth. "He's alive," Adam said, relief in his voice. "But he's out cold. I can't get him to wake up." "What happened to him?" I asked, knowing Adam didn't have the answer. "I don't know. I don't see any blood or wounds," Adam replied, looking around for answers. "Let's get him back to the manor. We can call Agent Bramble. She'll need to send some agents out." I chewed my lower lip. "You don't think we should call an ambulance?" "We don't know what happened, Holly. It's not like he has a broken arm or something that humans could fix. The SBA's healers will know what to do either way." The Supernatural Protection Agency knew Santa was in Beechwood Harbor and had agents dedicated to ensuring his safety while he was on his tour. They could send help here just as quickly as human emergency services. "You're right," I said, bobbing my head. "Here, I'll get one side." As I bent to get into position, I spotted a red hat under the sleigh. I squatted down to get a closer look and realized that beside the hat there was a pair of spectacles. One of the lenses was broken, scattered on the grass. A sick feeling roiled through me as I plucked the glasses off the ground and held them up. "Adam, look." He glanced up. "Are those?" I nodded. "His hat's here, too." Adam's dark eyes went wide. "You don't think—" The knot in my stomach twisted in tighter on itself. "I think someone attacked Santa." "Kidnapped?" Evangeline repeated. "How do you know?" We'd managed to carry the head elf back up the hill to the Beechwood Manor and interrupted Harmony and Evangeline's Christmas movie marathon. They'd helped us get the still unconscious elf comfortable on the couch and listened as we recounted our findings. "I mean, we don't know for sure," I admitted, "but his hat and glasses were left behind." "Maybe he just dropped his glasses and they got trampled," Evangeline suggested. "And maybe the hat isn't his. Or it's his backup hat or something." She trailed off, worry in her almond-shaped eyes. Adam placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, and she fell silent. Harmony leaped into action and began rummaging through the couch cushions. After a moment, she fished out her cell phone and held it up. "I'm calling Merrill. The SBA needs to send some agents out here." "I'll call Bramble," I said, reaching into my pocket for my own cell phone. Adam and Evangeline shifted their attention to the head elf, carefully inspecting him for signs of a struggle or fight. His clothing was clean, and there weren't any cuts or bruises on his face or hands. What in the other world had happened? And how had no one noticed? The vendors couldn't have gone long before Adam and...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?